Welcome. What you are about to watch is not science fiction, and it is not folklore. It is a serious investigation into one of history's most compelling unresolved questions, the mystery of the oldest musical instrument, the 60,000-year-old Neanderthal flute. Across the world, in universities, research institutes, and field excavations, serious scholars are wrestling with evidence that does not fit the accepted story. Evidence that has been documented, measured, and peer-reviewed, and that still has no satisfying conventional explanation. We are going to look at that evidence carefully, without prejudice in either direction. Not dismissing what is extraordinary, but not accepting it without scrutiny either. The truth, as always, is in the details. In 1995, archaeologists excavating a cave in Slovenia found a cave bear thigh bone with 2 complete holes and 2 partial holes, dated to approximately 60,000 years ago. If those holes were made intentionally, if the bone is a flute, then Neanderthals were making music 20,000 years before Homo sapiens arrived in Europe. The object is called the Divje Babe flute, and the argument about whether it is a flute or a carnivore-chewed bone has not fully concluded in 30 years. The case for a flute is compelling. The holes are smooth-edged and regular in spacing. They align with notes of the diatonic scale. Replicas made from bare bone produce musical tones. The probability of a carnivore creating exactly 4 aligned, evenly spaced holes in a bone is statistically very low. A 2023 reanalysis confirmed the holes are too regular for carnivore damage. Meanwhile, in Germany's Swabian Jura, archaeologists found definitively Homo sapiens flutes dated to 40,000-43,000 years old, carved from vulture bone and mammoth ivory, with V-notch mouthpieces and 5-finger holes. These are beyond doubt the oldest confirmed musical instruments. But the Divje Babe bone sits in a Slovenian cave layer with no Homo sapiens tools and no modern human remains. If it is a flute, who made it? And if Neanderthals made music, what does that mean for everything we think we know about them? This is where our investigation begins. Stay with us, because the further we go into the evidence, the more extraordinary it becomes. The story you think you know is only the surface. Beneath it lies something far more remarkable. Let us begin. Before we examine the specific evidence, we need to step back and understand the context. This case does not exist in isolation. It sits within the global puzzle of unexplained ancient construction, and to properly evaluate what we are looking at, we need to understand the broader picture that surrounds it. The sky was the original clock, calendar, and map. Before writing, before money, before cities, human beings looked up and organized their lives around what they saw. The position of the sun at solstice told them when to plant and when to harvest. The rising of specific stars marked the seasons. The phases of the moon governed ceremonial calendars in cultures from Ireland to India. Our ancestors were not casual observers of the night sky. They were meticulous, obsessive, and precise in a way that rivals modern astronomical science. This precision is encoded in stone at sites around the world. Newgrange in Ireland is aligned so precisely that sunlight enters its inner chamber only during the 5 days around the winter solstice, and it has done so every year for more than 5,000 years. The pyramids of Giza are oriented to true north with an accuracy of 0.05 degrees. Stonehenge tracks both the midsummer sunrise and the midwinter sunset, as well as the 18-6-year lunar cycle. These alignments are not accidental. They were engineered with mathematical precision by cultures we have long underestimated. What drove this obsession with celestial mechanics? Partly practical. Agriculture depends on knowing the seasons. But partly something more profound. Ancient cultures believed the sky was alive, that the movements of stars and planets determined the fates of kingdoms and harvests. In this worldview, encoding celestial cycles into permanent stone was not merely useful but sacred. The great monuments of the ancient world are, among other things, the most durable clocks ever built. This context matters because it tells us something important. What we are about to investigate is not an isolated curiosity. It is part of a pattern that researchers in multiple fields have been independently documenting for decades, and patterns in science demand explanation. With that foundation in place, let us now turn to the specific case at hand. Now we reach the heart of the matter, the core evidence surrounding the oldest musical instrument. The 60,000-year-old Neanderthal flute is more extensive, more verified, and more troubling for conventional explanations than most people realize. Let us walk through it systematically, fact by fact, and allow the evidence to speak for itself. We are not going to speculate here. Every point that follows is documented in peer-reviewed publications, official archaeological records, or government archives that are publicly accessible. The question is not whether these facts are real. The question is what they mean. Consider this first extraordinary detail. The Divje Babe flute is a cave bear femur found in 1995 at Divje Babe Cave in northwestern Slovenia. It has 2 complete holes and remnants of 2 further holes, positioned along the shaft of the bone. Uranium series dating of the surrounding sediment layer gives an age of approximately 60,000 years. The archaeological layer in which it was found contains Mousterian stone tools, the industry associated with Neanderthals, and no tools or remains of modern Homo sapiens. This single data point, if taken in isolation, might be set aside. Anomalies happen, instruments malfunction, researchers make mistakes. But as we continue, you will see that this is not an isolated anomaly. It is part of a consistent and documented pattern. But that is only the beginning. Researchers also discovered the holes in the Divje Babe bone align with notes of the diatonic scale when the bone is held as a flute. Slovenian archaeologist Ivan Turk, who led analysis of the object, demonstrated that a replica made from cave bear femur of similar diameter and length can produce recognizable musical tones when the holes are covered and uncovered. Turk published his analysis in Mousterian Bone Flute, 1997, and has continued to defend the interpretation against critics over 3 decades. Now, a skeptic might propose an alternative explanation for this, and that is entirely reasonable. We should always test alternative explanations before accepting extraordinary ones. The problem is that the alternative explanations, when examined carefully, create more problems than they solve. The mystery deepens when we examine. Nicholas Kennard and colleagues at the University of Tübingen announced in 2009 the discovery of multiple flutes in the Swabian Jura of southwestern Germany, dated to 40,000-43,000 years old. These include the Neanderthal Flute, a vulture wing bone, radius, with a carved V-notch blowing end and 5 finger holes, and flutes made from mammoth ivory. These are definitively Aurignacian artifacts associated with early modern Homo sapiens in Europe, making them the oldest confirmed musical instruments without dispute. This is where the conventional account begins to strain. Each individual fact might be dismissed or minimized in isolation. But the cumulative weight of the evidence is another matter entirely. Perhaps most remarkable of all, the Neanderthal vulture bone flute has a deliberately shaped V-notch at one end functioning as a blowing channel, and 5 carefully spaced finger holes along the shaft. Experimental archaeologist Wolf Hein produced a working replica and demonstrated that the instrument can produce full melodic sequences. The manufacturing technique, splitting a long bone and carving out the inner cavity before reassembling and sealing it, shows considerable technical sophistication and advanced planning by its maker. Researchers who have examined this evidence have described it as genuinely difficult to explain within the accepted framework. These are not fringe commentators. They are credentialed academics publishing in mainstream journals, raising questions that the field has not yet satisfactorily answered. Then there is the matter of Francesco Derrico and colleagues challenged the Neanderthal authorship of the Divje Babe bone in a 2002 paper, arguing the holes could be carnivore puncture marks rather than deliberate perforations. They noted that cave bears, hyenas, and other carnivores commonly gnaw bones, occasionally producing holes. Derrico and Chase produced experimental carnivore-gnawed bones showing some superficial similarity to the Divje Babe holes. Ivan Turk responded that carnivore holes are typically jagged, irregular, and asymmetric, unlike the smooth-edged, regularly spaced holes on the Divje Babe bone. What makes this particularly significant is its independence from the previous points. This is not a case of one theory requiring another. These are separate lines of evidence converging on the same uncomfortable conclusion. Adding to the enigma is this finding. A 2023 reanalysis of the Divje Babe bone by Turk, Kava, and colleagues applied advanced imaging techniques and statistical analysis to the hole's spacing, morphology, and edge characteristics. The study concluded that the regularity and smoothness of the holes are inconsistent with carnivore damage under any tested model of carnivore gnawing behavior. The study was published in the Royal Society Open Science Journal and was widely reported. However, the Neanderthal authorship question is considered by many researchers to remain technically open until further archaeological context can be established. Taken together, these facts form a pattern that cannot be explained by coincidence, misidentification, or methodological error. Each piece of evidence has been examined by skeptics. Each has been subjected to alternative explanations. And in each case, the alternative explanation falls short of accounting for everything that has been documented. We are left with a body of evidence that demands explanation and an accepted narrative that does not provide one. This is where serious inquiry begins. Now that we have established the evidence, we need to examine the theories that researchers have proposed to explain the oldest musical instrument, the 60,000-year-old Neanderthal flute. This is where the debate becomes most intense, because the theories reflect not just different interpretations of the same evidence, but fundamentally different assumptions about what is possible and what the past looked like. Understanding these theories is not just an academic exercise. Each one has been championed by serious researchers with genuine credentials, and each one captures something that the others miss. The truth, if it is ever established, will likely draw on elements of several. The first major explanation proposed by researchers holds that the Divje Babe bone is a Neanderthal-made flute, as argued by Ivan Turk and supported by the 2023 reanalysis. The holes are too regular and smooth-edged for carnivore damage. They align with diatonic scale intervals, and replicas produce musical tones. The archaeological context contains only Mousterian, Neanderthal, tools, and no modern human remains. If correct, this makes the Divje Babe flute the oldest known musical instrument by 17,000 years, and implies that Neanderthals possessed symbolic and musical capability previously attributed only to Homo sapiens. This interpretation has significant academic support and is backed by substantial evidence, but it is not without problems. Critics point out that it requires assumptions that go beyond what the evidence strictly supports, and that key predictions of this theory have not been confirmed by subsequent research. It remains contested, and the contest is productive. A rival school of thought argues that the holes in the Divje Babe bone were produced by a carnivore, likely a cave bear or hyena chewing the bone, and the apparent regularity and musical spacing are coincidental. Derrico and Chase argued this position in 2002, producing experimental carnivore-gnawed bones as comparators. The main problem with this theory is statistical. The probability of a carnivore producing exactly 4 smoothly edged, regularly spaced, aligned holes in a bone of this diameter by chance is calculated to be very low. This theory is controversial, and deliberately so. Its proponents argue that the evidence demands an explanation outside the conventional framework. Critics counter that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and that the evidence presented, while suggestive, does not yet meet that standard. The debate continues in peer-reviewed literature. Perhaps the most unconventional theory suggests that even if the holes are intentional perforations, the specific interval spacing does not constitute evidence of diatonic scale knowledge. Any 4 holes placed on a bone of that diameter and wall thickness would produce notes with similar intervals due to the physical acoustics of cylindrical resonators. This third position attempts to separate the intentionality question from the musical knowledge question. Critics note that if the holes are intentional and produce consistent tones, the practical distinction from a flute becomes purely semantic. What is striking about this debate is not merely that experts disagree. That is normal and healthy in science. What is striking is the quality of the disagreement. Serious researchers, working from the same body of evidence, reaching genuinely different conclusions. That level of fundamental disagreement, when it persists over decades, is a signal that something important has not yet been understood. The question is not which of these theories is right. The question is whether any of them is right, or whether the truth is something that none of the current frameworks has yet been able to capture. The case surrounding the oldest musical instrument, the 60,000-year-old Neanderthal flute, does not rest on speculation alone. What distinguishes this investigation from pure mythology is the existence of documented, physical, verifiable evidence, material that has been examined by credentialed researchers and whose authenticity is not seriously disputed. What is disputed is its interpretation. Let us review the most significant documented evidence as objectively as possible. We are not going to cherry-pick the data that supports a preferred conclusion. We are going to lay out what exists and let you draw your own assessment. Physical evidence supporting this account includes Ivan Turk's analysis documented that the Divje Babe holes have smooth, rounded edges characteristic of deliberate drilling or scraping, rather than the jagged, irregular profiles typical of carnivore puncture marks on bone. Experimental carnivore-gnawed bones produced by Derico showed different edge morphology under close comparison. The 2023 Turk, Kava et al. Reanalysis applied high-resolution imaging and confirmed that the hole characteristics fall outside the range of variation documented in carnivore-damaged bones across a large comparative sample. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Investigators have documented the Jason-Klerstal vulture bone flute, dated to 42,000-43,000 years ago, has an unambiguous V-notch mouthpiece carved at one end and 5 regularly spaced finger holes, features that cannot result from carnivore gnawing and definitively establish intentional manufacture. Wolf Heinz replication experiments showed the instrument produces a full melodic range. The Swabian Jura flutes are held at the Museum of Tübingen University and are the oldest undisputed musical instruments known to archaeology. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. On-site analysis revealed the Divje Babe bone was found in the same stratigraphic layer as Mousterian stone tools, hand axes, and scrapers of the Neanderthal industrial tradition. No Aurignacian tools, no Homo sapiens skeletal remains, and no other modern human indicators were found in the same layer. This archaeological context is the strongest evidence for Neanderthal authorship. The bone was buried with Neanderthal artifacts, not modern human artifacts, and the Neanderthal archaeological horizon at Divje Babe is stratigraphically well established. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Each individual piece of evidence might, in principle, be explained away. A single anomalous artifact might be misidentified. A single anomalous date might reflect contamination. A single anomalous eyewitness account might reflect misperception. The question is whether all of the evidence can be explained away. and whether the explanations required are more or less plausible than the evidence itself. When multiple independent lines of inquiry converge on the same conclusion, that convergence is the most powerful signal in empirical science. And that is exactly what we are seeing here. We have examined the history, the evidence, and the theories surrounding the oldest musical instrument, the 60,000-year-old Neanderthal flute. Now we need to ask the question that is sometimes overlooked in discussions of ancient mysteries. Why does this matter? What does it mean for us today? It would be easy to file this away as an interesting historical curiosity, a puzzle from a distant past with no bearing on our present lives. That would be a fundamental mistake. The questions raised by this case touch on issues that are directly relevant to who we are, where we came from, and what the human story actually looks like before the period covered by conventional history. The Divje Babe Neanderthal authorship question remains technically open, though the 2023 Turk et al. Reanalysis significantly strengthened the intentionality argument. The Swabian Jura flutes at Tübingen University are the oldest undisputed musical instruments and establish music as part of the cognitive toolkit of early modern humans in Europe by 40,000 years ago. Music is now recognized by cognitive archaeologists as a significant indicator of symbolic thinking, alongside art, personal ornament, and burial practice. If Neanderthals made the Divje Babe flute, the cognitive gap between Neanderthals and Homo sapiens narrows considerably. DNA studies have already confirmed that modern non-African humans carry 1-4% Neanderthal DNA from interbreeding events. The Divje Babe bone is displayed at the National Museum of Slovenia in Ljubljana. Furthermore, the tools available to investigate these questions are advancing rapidly. Satellite imaging, ground-penetrating radar, ancient DNA analysis, isotopic tracing, and deep-sea sonar are all providing capabilities that previous generations of researchers could only dream of. Cases that were genuinely unresolvable 10 years ago are now open to new analysis, and the findings, consistently, are expanding rather than contracting the mystery. The investigation continues. New discoveries are being made. New analyses are being published. New voices are entering the conversation from disciplines that were not previously part of the discussion. The answers, when they come, and they will come, will not merely solve a historical puzzle. They will force a fundamental revision of assumptions that underpin our entire understanding of human history and human potential. We have now walked through the complete case of the oldest musical instrument, the 60,000-year-old Neanderthal flute, from the historical record, through the physical evidence, across the competing theories, and into the modern significance of what remains unresolved. What the story of Neanderthal ultimately reveals is not just a historical puzzle. It is a mirror. It reflects our assumptions back at us, our assumptions about what ancient people were capable of, about how knowledge is gained and lost across the centuries, and about the relationship between what we know and what we merely think we know. The evidence presented in this documentary is real. The questions it raises are genuine. The debate among researchers is ongoing, and that is healthy. Science is not a set of conclusions. It is a process. And the process requires that we remain open to evidence that challenges what we thought we knew, however uncomfortable that challenge might be. If you came to this documentary as a skeptic, we hope the evidence gave you something to think about. If you came as a true believer, we hope the critical examination gave you a more nuanced picture. The truth, as always, lies in the evidence, not in what we want to be true. Thank you for watching. If this investigation sparked your curiosity, please subscribe to the channel. We publish new documentaries every week, covering the full range of historical mysteries that the mainstream has not yet adequately explained. Leave a comment below telling us which case you want us to investigate next. The conversation continues. The investigation never ends.